I was fired. I was about 90 days behind on my mortgage and my car note. I'm literally driving my car around the corner every morning to avoid repo. And what ended up happening is a guy came into the dealership and he bought a Ford Raptor, like a 70K truck, in cash. He was about my age. And so just going through that, I asked him, I said, hey, what exactly are you doing that I'm not doing? Because obviously I'm doing something wrong. And so he just told me roofing.
Welcome back. Today we're speaking with Matt Brasic. So Matt, I met him at a conference, and one of the things that I noticed about Matt is his ability to just mimic systems. He's very systems oriented. And one of his superpowers is replicating proven models. So this was an Alex Hormozy event. So you needed to be at a certain level in order to be there. And, we instantly, we connected. And one of the really cool things, so he runs two different businesses. So he has a roofing company, and then he's got a recruiting company to help find staff for other companies in the roofing industry. So it's really cool his background. And in 2025, they added 22 million in top line revenue. So there's a lot of content we're going to be getting into and ideas on how he goes about his frameworks to this, which will definitely be able to help you moving forward as you're building your business. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it, Mark.
So it's pretty amazing. You're running two companies now, and you've made some really big headway in adding a lot of value to the marketplace. Can you give a little bit about your background and what got you into becoming an entrepreneur?
Yeah, background in this in particular, I guess I'll just jump into how I joined the roofing industry. So I had previously been I'd been fired from my W-2 position over at T-Mobile. We had thrown some credit card info into the trash, and unfortunately, the next morning we got an audit. I was fired. I was about 90 days behind on my mortgage and my car note, and spent a few months finding another job. I was 23 years old at the time, so I had pretty decent salary from what I was coming off of, but not a whole lot of experience to get another job in that industry because I just kind of worked my way up. We jumped into car sales for about 30 days, and I'm literally driving my car around the corner every morning to avoid repo. So I'd wake up at 5 a.m., drive my car out of the garage, park it around the corner, and walk over there. And what ended up happening is a guy came into the dealership and he bought a Ford Raptor, like a 70K truck, in cash. He was about my age. And so just going through that, I asked him, I said, hey, what exactly are you doing that I'm not doing? Because obviously I'm doing something wrong. And so he just told me roofing. And I was like ready to go jump into construction. And he was like, nah, man, I just sell it. And so I applied for a couple jobs on Indeed. This was a Friday afternoon, about 3:30. I called three places. The first place that called me for an interview, I could go in on Sunday. Monday, I was knocking doors. So I jumped into that and kind of had an entrepreneurial spirit because I was building a business within a business for, I would say, about 5 years or so. Started building up that business as a sales manager. And at some point, I realized I think I'd do the roofing company thing a little bit differently. So that's when I jumped in to do my own thing. Figured I could make a little bit more money for just a little bit more work.
Mm. So for 5 years, you had said you were building a business within a business. So you were an entrepreneur, right? So you were working within the model, but then you were growing that business. Was that the model? Is that the thinking what you had done?
Yeah, so roofing sales is really interesting. So it's all 1099 work. Generally speaking, not many companies are doing it W-2 by the book. So a lot of these companies are hiring a 1099 employee, right? They bring them on. It's 100% commission. It is climbing roofs, knocking doors, finding your own leads. You're not given anything. You don't get paid for 60 to 90 days, and you're using your own vehicle. So, and no health insurance while climbing roofs. So it's a tough sell. And that being said, I jumped into it because I had nothing to lose. So I knew the commissions if I knocked on a door and I found a house that was willing to go through this insurance claims process. I knew the commissions were somewhere between 2,500 to $5,000, just depending on what the ticket size was and how big the house was. And I knew that if I sold two of those every month, I'd be able to pay all my bills. So every other job that I looked at, I just said, if I did this job, I'd make enough to pay my bills, but not enough to pay the debt that I felt myself in. And this was the only path that I saw in front of me that was open to me because the barrier of entry is basically anyone with a pulse, right? And so I jumped in and tried to make the most of it.
Love that. And so this to me is one of the best things for like young entrepreneurs that are getting into the business, like learning how to sell. The best way to learn how to sell is to get your reps in. And so that's why I love this model because one, you're getting your reps in, you're having conversations on an ongoing basis, but it's not a cushy job where you're getting paid regardless of the results. Like you are, you need to get better or you're not eating, right? You're not making your mortgage or your rent payments. And so this kind of urgency, how you structure yourself is really smart. And I think that's where a lot of people start. It's like, I want something that's secure, but you putting yourself in an uncomfortable position where you have to perform, it means that you will naturally get really good at sales, which is like one of the big three things that you need to be as an entrepreneur.
What do you see as the other two?
I see as service delivery is the other two, and then as the other second, and then the third would be marketing. I think
Mm,
marketing skill would be that third item. So if you can get
yeah.
really good at service delivery and marketing, I think those are really important. And then the sales, I think that that's something that really doesn't take any money to really start to get good. And if you can craft that first, I think you can leapfrog,
Mm,
a lot of other people that are maybe if they start the customer service side, right? So that's just my kind of insight on or thoughts on that.
yeah, love it.
What do you think? What do you think would be? Is there any other skill sets from an entrepreneur that you would say would be like up there with kind of a handful of like really important items?
Yeah, it might be a cop out answer, but I think sales is like the skill. So like if you can learn how to sell, you learn psychology around sale. Like it's applied psychology. So if you
Mm,
learn how to market, you're just selling one to many instead of one to one. Or
mhm.
you could sell in a different atmosphere, but you have to know what people want. So there's some type of cognitive empathy that occurs that allows you to sell in a different medium. So may not be face to face, may not be door to door, may not be in a retail environment, may not be online. I mean, it could be whatever environment, but if you learn how to sell, you can market. And then on the same token, with service, if you know what people want and you know how they want it, it's the same principle. So I think that learning sales first makes the other two significantly easier. Where if people come from, let's say, service and go to sales, well, you didn't learn all the hard stuff like confrontation, so you're in a comfort
Yeah,
zone, in a bubble.
yeah, yeah.
And I think sales to everything else seems to be a hack.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and I think as a as you start leading your company, you start bringing on other experts, being able to sell your vision to your team and getting them on board with where you're going, I think is an ongoing thing. Like you need to be, to me, it's like if you're going to be a leader in an organization, you need to be able to sell your ideas to the market, but even more important as you start to grow and scale to your team members that are out doing the thing. And it's interesting. I heard Steve Jobs say this is you need somebody banging the drum, like, here's where we're going, guys. This is the big picture. It's like I'm up in the trees, like we're going this way, we're making progress. Let's keep going, right? And if you don't have that, I think people they get, purpose is obviously is a big thing for a lot of, especially A players. I found,
Mhm.
and so I found for me when the times where I wasn't banging the drum and reminding people, here's where we're going, we're doing big things, we're on this mission together. There wasn't that kind of stickiness from a culture standpoint, and so the I just think that it's an ongoing skill set, and sales is at the heart of that. You got to believe in what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think you touched on one other piece on there, which is leadership. And so a lot of times, sales and even what I do in recruiting, it's like selling people to sell, and it's selling them on the idea that they can enter this field that they know nothing about and change their life. And so I think that purpose and having some type of drive outside of monetary systems is, if you're familiar with like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's as you continue moving up the pyramid, eventually like you have security. And the next
Mm.
thing to drive you is going to be love and belonging, purpose, self actualization, etc.
So you lead. There's a lot of people you lead in like inspiration in like a recruiting company. That's obviously you got to be really good at what it is that you do. Um, Being able to tap into that. So an entrepreneur, they're going in to hire people. Like, how would you approach kind of that first conversation to be able to figure out what it is that where people are at from a need standpoint to be able to help motivate them and get them on board with the vision and the mission that you're going after.
Are you asking the question in regards to the client that I sell to or in regards to the candidate that I bring on to the company?
Yeah, so how about both? So initially it was for the team that you're
Hmm.
building, right? So
Yeah.
there's that side of it, but I'm curious as well, actually, from the salesman, from a client standpoint as well. So I'm not sure
Yeah.
if there's any difference between the two.
Yeah. So in one aspect, if I'm selling to the applicant on changing their life, essentially shedding their old identity and adopting this new identity where they're going to go knock doors for a living. They never dreamed, they never grew up thinking they want to do anything with roofing, and quite frankly, nobody in this industry does.
Mm,
Roofing is pretty much a sales industry. We just happen to sell roofs. And so a lot of what we do is one, we build the purpose behind it. So the companies are essentially being a Robin Hood of the roofing industry. So we're stealing from the rich insurance companies and making sure that the poor people like you and I, all the middle class, everyone's getting the roofs paid for, pumping equity into their homes, et cetera. So we build up that hero story initially. And then from there, we start talking about the grit and the things that they will learn. Yes, it's hard, but it's extremely simple. You knock on 96 doors per day, one third of them open, that's 32 opens. One tenth of them will say yes to a free inspection, which is your lead magnet. If you can set the appointment, then it's a volume game. In the volume game, if you do 32 door opens, that means one out of 10, actually say yes to the free inspection. You have 3.2 per day, 5 days a week, that's 16 inspections. If I can close one out of 16 people on just filing a claim, then I made 2,500 bucks. And so if I did that 5 days a week, then, like, the only difference between people who don't make it and the people that do make it is the ones that don't make it gave up too soon.
I love that. So you broke down a clear path. If you have a goal of this, you want to make this, here's the path, here are the conversion rates. So you have that broken down and you're able to communicate that effectively. I think that's where I
Mhm.
think a lot of leaders, they're not able to effectively communicate. Here's what the onboarding, here's what the path would look like, and we figured it out and we can help you get there.
Totally. And so, like, from a leadership standpoint, you asked about how to sell to these business owners that want recruiting in their industry. And so if I sell to the salesperson, I instill a belief that they too can do this thing. I'm instilling the belief that they can never not make 100K or less again if they
Mm,
try. They can allow themselves to, but it's never conditional. I give them autonomy, I give them
mhm.
agency. And so teaching them that pathway, teaching them the prescription, that is the inputs that drive the output. And then for the business owner, it is the same thing. The quickest way to add 10 million in revenue to your company is hire $10 million sales reps. And so if you don't understand the inputs on how you make money as a business, the quickest, easiest lever to pull is hiring door to door cold outbound people that generate their own leads. If you went on Facebook and you ran your ads in roofing, you're probably going to get a 5 to 1, 8 to 1, maybe even a 15 to 1 return on ad spend. But in recruiting, you can get 300 plus to 1 because if it costs you $500 to recruit a individual who's willing to knock doors and it took you 10 of them to find one that stuck, $5,000 to go make someone who sells $1 million on a 15% net is $150,000 in net profit per year. And if they stick for 2 or 3 years, your lifetime net profit per employee is just outstanding. So that is the highest lever.
So what do you do? This is it's such a smart conversation that you brought this insight into, because to me it's like the big question a lot of business owners get is like, how do I grow? And so tracking what the input is and being very clear what that is, I think it's simple, yet most people just don't do it. So here's the question: is once you figure out what that formula is or the path,
Mhm.
and you shed the identity of and you build them up, like, here's we're the Robin Hood, right, and we're doing big things. And how do you continue to, we'll say, motivate, or we'll say keep the sales reps on track? Maybe I'm going to back up. There's a question before: how do you find those people to be able to have the right, we'll say, ingredients to be able to be successful? And then how do you keep them on track to continue to make the right inputs on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah. For the first question, I can answer that declaratively or procedurally. You asked, like, how do you find the people? Which answer would you rather have?
I'd rather have what are the key attributes to that they should have, that you found to be the best traits
Hmm.
that creates a strong, motivated salesperson on a day to day, where you're not having to micromanage and kind of push them.
Yeah. Deprivation would be the number one trait. It's finding somebody who wants it more than somebody else. And typically, those people either have less or think they have less than others. So there's somebody who lives in a state of comparison. So if I have somebody who goes to the gym and they're big and strong, they have at one point felt weak. And so they went there because they wanted to get something. And the dichotomy of desire is that we want things that we think that we lack. And so I find people that have some common traits, whether it be a sports background looking for community, a gym background looking for in like the opposite of insecurity. I was going to say security, but I don't want to confuse that with the monetary version of it. But we look for people that are looking for something that is that they don't have, whether it be somebody that grew up without a dad and they want to find a group of guys that they can go knock doors with and have that like masculine leadership, or if it's finding people that have a sports background and just miss the good old days that they had in high school. They didn't make the college thing, and this is the next sport. And so it's finding somebody that has a background that has transferable skills, and that they've done something consistently for a long period of time is also another benefit. It's a factor. It's not necessary. I can find that in almost anybody and anything. You're either watching Netflix all the time, you're playing video games all the time. Like video games is still a sport. At the end of the day,
Mm.
you are well practiced. You are doing the same thing over and over again. It's inputs and outputs. So if somebody is competitive at whatever the thing is that they do, if we can find that little bit of drive where they've learned how to improve at something, we just show them the new game, what the feedback loop is on how to improve, and then we continue getting them to do that. I think I might have answered both questions there, but if there's more, please let me know.
Okay, so the where, so the we'll say the deprivation, so that they have like a desire to do something more, to get something more because they're lacking in that. Are there any other areas like for outbounds? Maybe it's an outbound, sales company that's listening, or an entrepreneur, and it's like, are there any? You said transferable skills, so you said video games is potential. It's like they're
Yeah.
excellent at that, right? But are there any other areas that you found for you where you found like really great sales reps that have transferable skills? What other industry from the outbound sales roofing that has relayed really well for successful reps in your business?
Yeah, what we're really looking for is somebody who's exemplified gamification in some area of their life. And gamification means making life into a game where we can improve and level up. So it could be something extremely solitaire, like yoga, and making these gradual improvements on like getting a little bit deeper into those stretches. It could be somebody who is really deep into into another sales game, right? Like they could be doing another type of sale, and that's transferable. If somebody has had a sports background and they learned how to be coached, that is
Hmm.
also transferable. We're looking for somebody who is uh, basically improved at something. Did you start at something and suck because we suck at everything when we start it? And did you stick with it long enough to continue to learn how to have that feedback loop where if you did it long enough, because like none of us knew how to tie our shoes, right? We started with that, but now we don't even think about it. And so there's four different levels of competence, right? There's unconscious, incompetent. There is conscious, I know of it and I'm still incompetent at it. There's conscious competence, which means that I know of it and now I know how to do it while thinking about it. And then eventually it becomes unconscious competence where I don't have to think about it and it's innate. And we want to bring somebody all the way through that. They don't know about roofing, they don't know about sales. We want to teach that, bring them aware to that. And then we want to get them to think about it and how to do it. And then we want to have them do it so many times that they don't have to think. It's just what they do.
Yeah. Thank you for that. What does the onboarding look like to be able to get people to, or salespeople to, the point of they're going out and they have that ability to communicate the vision, and that being able to convert people to, yeah, you know what, I'm interested in
Mhm.
your business offering.
Yeah. Onboarding is pretty simple. We try to teach it. Uh, Most companies, the big difference between what we do and what we educate on. So, like when I'm selling roofing business owners to take on this recruiting service, the first thing we have to do is actually refresh their entire training process because most of them will bring on a sales rep. They'll try to teach them everything about sales, everything about roofing, everything about insurance, everything about climbing a roof without dying. And none of those things lead to like not feeling extremely overwhelmed. And our goal is to not only instill belief in the interview, but instill belief when they're in the first 2 weeks of training that they can actually do this and get their first dollar across the bridge. So the inputs that are going to do that is how to knock doors, what to say, and what to say when they say no. So there's 10 different flavors of no that they can go over. Those are the objections. And we have to remember what version of no gets which answer version of the objection to each of those. And we have to be able to pair those where they don't sound like robotic dialogue. And so the first 2 days of training, we teach what the industry is, what to say, and what to say when they say no, as well as pay plans. So we'll reverse engineer how many doors they have to knock to how many roofs they have to get, to how many roofs it takes to hit their income goal to survive, and how many doors it takes to hit their income goal on to thrive. So if someone wants to make 150K, it's reverse engineering the entire thing on how many doors you have to knock per week to get to that number because it's a volume game. And even if you don't hit that volume, one of the big things that we teach is that, well, I told you about if you don't make it, it's because you quit too soon. But we
Mhm.
also teach that it's not if you make this amount of money, it's when. And so if they just keep going, they eventually get good enough where they can hit that target. It just may take them a little bit longer than they think.
So that training program, is that a like you have physical printed copies that they get a booklet? Do you have an online program that you teach, or is it all like that you communicate one on one? Like what's the vehicle to be able to deliver the material that you use?
Yeah, so they can read. A lot of it's in person classroom training, but the biggest lever on all of it is role play. So it's actually, yeah, it's actually approximating the door to door environment in the office as much as possible, having a makeshift door there, knocking on it, having another person on the other side of it that's sometimes the pissed off homeowner, and having that live feedback with the other people that are training. We always do a one to many session. We never train anyone one to one. I think that's a very poor way to use your time. But if you could teach people in a group, they learn faster and they hold each other accountable, and it keeps up that team and gamification thing that I talked about.
Love that. So when you're hiring bulk salespeople. So how many in a room would you get, and how would you line up? Is it just you're doing a bunch of hires and then you bring on a group and then you know a certain amount's going to continue to be successful, and there's going to be a certain dropout, like a churn rate from that,
Totally.
and what's the number that you generally hire?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if you are a large private equity company that has many branches, I've seen and jumped on some of these calls where there are 200 people in a live training that's over Zoom. And I've also seen, just mom and pop roofing companies. And typically, what I recommend is if you have somebody who can train them in the field, you want a 1 to 2 ratio. So just like if you had more than 2 kids, you have to get a third row in your SUV. You only have 2 hands. You have trouble crossing the street with all of them being safe, right? If you keep it to 1 to 2, you don't have that issue. And so they can both go on both sides of the street. They can knock, you can be there to support, supervise, shadow, go back and forth with them, get feedback. And so if a company's just starting off, if it's an owner that is trying to move from sales to actually being the owner of their company rather than the main sales guy, it is hiring 2 setters and teaching them just to set appointments for them. And so they do that. And then eventually those 2 setters graduate, they become full closers, and then they can each set 2 people themselves. So it just starts to multiply and spread out the larger the company gets. But when a company's starting, it's a 1 to 2 ratio until you start to build a team where you have more support.
So to recap on that, if you're the owner and salesperson, you're the lead, you'll go and hire two setters. So two, say, inside sales, where they're setting appointments for the owner who's the main outside like salesperson. And then so they have one on two. And then from there they trained up until they get to a point where they scale up into the outside sales, and then you hire two setters for that one outside sales. Does that sound right?
Yeah. So the owner operates as a trainer and closer. You might call them an account executive if you're following my playbook. But they're running the appointments, and so the person that we I told you most roofing companies will have drink from a fire hose. They bring on the sales rep and they try to teach them everything about roofing, what to look for damage, what's going to get paid for by the insurance, how to argue with the insurance company, how to climb the roof without dying. Right?
Yeah.
Um, I don't advise anybody teach them any of that stuff until they can book appointments, because if they cannot book appointments and they quit early, you're wasting their time and your time. And if someone's going to jump and join your company, quit their job, come take this leap of faith into roofing, like, you want them to waste as little time as possible, because if they're not getting a paycheck, you're literally like stopping them from whatever they will be doing in the future. You're allowing them to fall behind. So if you try to teach them too much too soon, you decrease the likelihood that they succeed. And so you hammer only because if we went on this hour conversation, the likeliness, let's say we go on our day and we reflect back on this a week from now, we're probably going to remember 2, 3 things that really stuck out. And
Yeah.
so if
100%.
I go over all this stuff, one, they're not going to retain most of it. So I'm wasting my breath and I'm wasting their attention, and they don't know what was the important thing that they stick on to. So that's why we stick so much of our attention and so much of the time duration that we have during training in the role play, in the door knock, in the objections, because that is what they're doing. They do that, and they don't need to learn how to climb a roof until they have an inspection set, and I'm ready to show them how to climb a roof.
So just to confirm, that first setter, is that phone? I guess it depends on the business, right? Because like the door knock on the roofing company, I guess they're out, they're setting for the outside sales who's actually going in and pitching. Is that, what's the structure look like? Is that the, is the setter online, like online and making the phone call, or is the
Oh, so
setter actually
they're
booking
they're door to
the,
door.
they're door to
Yeah.
door? Got
Yeah,
it.
so they're
Okay.
initially booking appointments up until the point that they book, let's say, 20 appointments, and then we start shadowing and allowing them to climb up on the roof, showing them how to do that, what to look for damage, because then we know that they can hunt, and therefore we can teach them how to convert what they've hunted.
How long is that process to be able to just teach them setting appointments?
2 days in the class, and then, I don't know, 500 to 1,000 doors.
Yeah, so smart. And do you recommend for that setter 100% commission or a mix of base and bonus?
Most companies bring them on 100% commission, where it's sink or swim. I recommend that we bring them on training pay, which is $20 an hour, and usually about 250 on signed contingency agreement. And that comes out of the closer's typical commission. So the closer benefits if they self-gen, they don't have to pay that out. And if they have leads coming in from them, they recognize that training people is the highest leverage activity they can do.
Got it. So $20 an hour, and then is there a certain? You said $250. Is that upfront, or is that?
Yep.
Uh, and then do they get X amount per booked appointment that they have? Is there any sort of spiff that they get on top of that, or just straight $20 an hour?
We've done we've tested both, and we had better performance when we were paying based on signed contingency that the closer signed versus paying a smaller amount on booked appointments. It was a lot harder to track with show rates. Just in door to door environment, if it was cold calls and we were in front of a computer, like there's numbers of ways to do it, but most importantly, what we care about is, are they setting appointments? Are they in an area that has damage? Does the customer have damage that qualifies for insurance with a valid policy? And what's our close rate?
So good. And how fast have you seen where people, they either sink or swim? Do you find, is there a number of days where like, okay, this person's going to make it? And then how do you know that this, I guess is just they're based on number of appointments, or that they're setting, or in they're like, how do you verify their success? And do you do anything to be able to help them have a stronger start?
Yeah, so the approximate environment in the classroom setting when we're role playing is the best thing to get them started and make them feel confident. If they know the script and they can read that without reading it, really,
Yeah.
if they actually have that understood, they understand the concepts and it's not based on memorization, that makes them significantly better. But to answer your question, if I have if I have a really good person, I've been surprised and they've ended up not being that good, but I've never had a person that I didn't think was good end up being good.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
you usually have a pretty quick read on if somebody's like, if they get through the interview and they're participating, they're asking questions, they're curious, you can tell that they're hungry, maybe a little fiery. Like you have a pretty good indicator that this person will probably work out. And they may surprise you and they may just flake, they may not show, whatever. But if you have somebody who's like, I don't know if I should take a chance on this guy, but I think you're always right. You shouldn't have taken the chance.
You should have taken the chance. That's
Yeah,
really good. I think that's where a lot of people, it's like they're convenient. They were an introduction. I'm just going to hire somebody, but that's actually been my experience as well. It's been very rare that somebody surprised me. And looking back, I don't know. There's actually this one lady that came on as a salesperson, and she was I think when she came on, she was like in her late 60s. I'm like, I don't know if you have a lot of energy. I was like, I'm not really sure. And then all of a sudden, when she started, she's just been for years now. She's been just like a consistent firecracker. She's bought in on the mission. She loves the mission, and she's been excellent. But yeah, I think that's probably a really good filter. Is make sure that you believe that they can be successful, and versus like, we're just going to bring them on and see if they're going to do well, especially if there's flags at the beginning, because you're going to spend time with them, right? So
totally.
uh, yeah, so good. And this is where the reason I think that this is really good that we're hanging out here for a bit is because with most businesses, if they could just generate more appointments, then they're gonna do well. And so this takes off the from the table, like, I don't have any money for, say, marketing, for example. Like this is straight up lead gen as in door knocking. And so this approach, would this work for, I guess there was a lot of businesses that your approach works really well. And have you seen any other businesses where your formula that you implement on the roofing side has worked really well in these other industries as well?
Yeah, I mean, it works for just about any industry. There's maybe a few things that have government restrictions that don't allow you to do so. But like if you're in real estate, you can knock on doors. You can absolutely knock on doors, see if people want to get a quote on, or not a quote, but an estimate of what their house would go for. If you're a wholesaler, you can go that approach. Even for the recruiting company, the way that we hire an SDR, who's someone who's hitting the cold phone, and they're calling roofing companies, it is the same volume. It's you call, you have a certain number of people that pick up, you have a certain number of people that you pitch, a certain number of people that will book the appointment to have the actual sit down with me. I get to sell them. I have a certain number of people that show. It's the same exact formula. And so the same way that we sell our product internally is the same way that we teach people to sell their product externally. So the way that we sell the recruiting service is the same way that we teach the people that we recruit for roofing companies to sell their service. And I don't think that there is a higher leverage pathway, but I think that there is more I think there's more of a learning curve on learning how to properly lead, coach, and hold people accountable. So I think that is the challenge, and that's why so many people default to paying an agency to generate them leads. Maybe they go learn leads themselves, but it's one person that's running Facebook ads and maybe they convert for a while, but it's shifting sand, right? So the algorithm changes, the trends change, people's behavior change, what they scroll and what they stop on changes. If they've seen it, they want to see something fresh. But for door to door, it's so I mean, it's been around. Like Jehovah's Witnesses have been doing it for a long time. I'm sure it's been around since before that. Since they've had doors, I'm sure that they've been knocked on. It's in the Bible.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think it's interesting. Everything old becomes new
Mm.
again. And it's like, you go off of it, but then, more and more now, I think that I mean, you're seeing results directly from that. And it's interesting. When I started in selling real estate in 2007, that's how I got my start is I knew if I knocked on, X amount of doors, I would book X amount of appointments, which I would generate X amount of agreements.
Mhm.
And it was the same with the cold calling as well. It was like I knew if I had 100 conversations, I could book 2 appointments, and I would sign one of those, and then, but 75% of those would end up closing a deal. So I think those conversion rates are really good to understand, and then it's like the input is really important. So the follow-up question is for the sales reps to be able to show up every day and then track and then keep it going on a consistent basis. Is there anything that you do to keep them motivated to keep showing up every day? Or is it just something that once you hire the right people, they're gonna, just show up and do it on their own?
So I think it's you keep them on a shorter leash up until they've made their first couple dollars over the bridge. Once you make 2,500 bucks, 5,000 bucks, whatever the dollar amount is on the commission, a couple of times and you see what level of work it actually is. There's very few activities that you can do that will pay you more than that. And so when we get people hooked on it, it's like a drug where people don't want to quit. And I'm saying that from the standpoint of if I teach somebody to make this level of money, we multiply that out on their effort if they were to do that through the entire year. We divide that by 2,000 to find their hourly rate of their goal, right?
Mm,
And then I say, "Hey, do you like mowing your lawn?" And they're like, "Not really." And it's like, "Cool, well that's $30, right? And your hourly rate so far seems like it's 108. So every time you mow your lawn, you lose $78 by not hiring it out. And if you're going to do something that you don't like, you might as well do something that you don't like that pays you. And so even
mm,
though people don't like door to door, it's uncomfortable. People don't like it. We teach them how to do that and how to properly allocate their time and resources. So a lot of it is just teaching them how to be an entrepreneur, a business within a business, and manage that. But when the first person comes on and they have their, let's say, 2 to 4 weeks of like learning this, it's a short leash and it's hand holding and it's making sure that we can accelerate how quickly they get it, even if we almost did most of it for them. They knock the door, they generate the lead, we close it for them, and we show them what it feels like and let them carry it all the way through. Once they have that little taste of success, then it's like, oh, I think I could do that. And they just need to see it. They need to see that it's real because a lot of it is just that I talked about it before, but it's instilling that belief and then making sure that they keep that belief and that fire doesn't go out. To answer something more technical on like managing it. We have them knock numbers 12 doors an hour, and we multiply that out by 8 hours. And so the objective goal is to hit 96 doors. They post their doors per day, how many opens, and how many inspections booked during that training period where they're just setting appointments. And then every day at 5:30, because if they're working 9 to 5, 5:30 is like a reasonable cutoff that if you were having that last conversation, you can drop your end of day numbers in the chat. And then those end of day numbers also teach us what thing that we're going to coach on. So if we find out that they are not knocking enough doors, it's about volume. If they're not getting enough opens, it's about what time of day they're knocking. If it's about how many inspections, it's like how do we sell the free inspection, go over these objections and role play more. If their show rate drops, then it's like, hey, like how are we setting these inspections? And like, are we sure that they're solid? Those are the things that we coach on based on the data that they give us on the end of day reps. So if they want to get better, they have to be honest. And if they're not honest, then they won't get better and then they'll quit anyway. And we're happy to fire them. We're happy to have them self quit. Neither of those matter. We most importantly, we want them to succeed unless they don't want to. And so we try to give them the keys on how to help us help them.
So here's a question for you. This is it to me. It's just it makes a lot of sense. To me, it's like it shatters any sort of stories that are being told. It's like my business or the market is slow. It's like it comes down to conversations ultimately and conversion rates and the input, doing it the right way, and what's the output, and then how do you improve the conversions all the way along, and then getting more in the front end as well for massive activity. It's just a numbers game, so it removes a lot of emotion, which I think for a business owner is like very liberating, right? Because then it takes
Mhm.
all the personal emotion off of it. It's like, listen, it's either fit or not a fit. So here's a follow up question on that. Say you have a salesperson that is, they've been around for a while, and and entitlement starts to creep up, and it's like, I don't need to do that anymore. I don't need to keep on honing my skill sets. How do you deal with a sales rep that maybe as you start to have creep of complacency and entitlement, and there, and then that affects the culture as well? How do you deal with that?
I'll tell you that it only matters if you don't have a recruiting and training engine where you can duplicate them. Because if you have other people that are coming up that are going to be outselling them that are newer than them, every salesperson has a healthy or unhealthy amount of ego, but no salesperson doesn't have ego. And so playing around with that and the dynamics of it, like, I mean, at the end of the day, if they self quit, if they decide to go lackluster and fall down a hole, a lot of being a sales manager is being a trained therapist. And like you have to talk people off the ledges all the time, remotivate them, etc. But one of the best motivators is that friendly competition. It's bringing in somebody else, getting them up to speed, and then also that salesperson, if they're training other people as well, if they have setters that are under them that they're coaching on how to knock the doors the same way that they used to when they were a setter, and they know that those set appointments turn into their leads, which turns into dollars on their side of things, right?
Mm,
That person has other people that are counting on them. And so that fulfills into that purpose piece that you were talking about. So there's a couple angles that it's all going through. At the end of the day, if someone has a bad turn in their life and they just decide that, hey, you know what, I'm going to go through a dark time right now. I know no one really decides that, but it happens. Um, I think there's a lot of bumpers to stop them from falling into the gutter. And if we need to have a one-on-one conversation with them on some personal stuff, we do 100%. I've been a part of a number of men's retreats where we do a lot of emotional, deep trauma work and things like that. So I'm comfortable having those conversations and I'm comfortable having a one-on-one role playing with the business owners that I help on how to have those conversations as well. But it's going where people don't want to go. It's stepping into the discomfort, which is essentially what we learned in door to door anyway. It's knocking on a door of someone who does not want us there as we interrupt their family's dinner. Like we develop thick skin through that. And so if an owner tells me that they were a savage in door to door, but then they can't have this conversation with this rep that they've known for 3 years, like what does that say about how good they were at door to door? And so then I get to play with their ego a little bit too.
yeah, that's really really good. Would you say that in every market that there are a we'll say there's enough potential candidates that could fill in and take this? So it's like if you're in a smaller market, some would say there's not enough people in my area that
Mm,
could fill this sales role. Have you, because you've worked with businesses across multiple cities, right? So this
mhm.
is where my I guess my question is there always a pipeline of potential excellent salespeople?
There's almost never a pipeline of excellent salespeople that are looking for a job. You have to be the best person that can train people, and you can find people that are willing to work 100%. If you're in an area that's not rural, and I'm saying not rural because I don't think it's worth positioning a home services business in a rural area. I just don't think that's the smartest move.
What would
There's
you
not enough people
classify
to
from
sell
a
to.
city from a population when you call rural? Like, what does that look like from a kind of minimum city size?
I don't even know if I've ever put a number to it, but like you gotta have stoplights. like suburbs or being like I would say like within 45 minutes from a major area, I think is probably a better like litmus test. And with storm chasing, if storm hits and like let's say I'm in one part of Chicago, like South Side, and let's say our office is over there, and like a storm hits 45 minutes west of the city, like we're driving to that storm. Like that's where we're working. Like that's where the money is. And so as far as answering your question around like talent, it really the constraint is how well can I train people? How well can I put people that are willing to do the work into becoming somebody who can produce $1 million in revenue, which $1 million in revenue in roofing is 40 deals, which is like 4 deals a month. So it's like one a week. And if you're doing the numbers that I just painted out to you, the only difference of people who hit that and don't hit that are the ones that work and the ones that don't. It's less a talent game.
It's so good. You just it's how well can you train people? It's like you get people, I mean, like finding people or candidates, right? You can post and all that with your job posting, making sure it's attractive job posting. Is there anything that you do to be able to attract the right to hook the right
Yeah.
potential that they're like, I see that. What do you do
Yeah.
in your job postings?
Yeah, so I look at it like a marketing funnel. I want to hit my ideal avatar. So as I mentioned before, the job offer for most of these roofing companies is 1099. You don't get paid for 60 days. A lot of these companies that I'm working with, I'm convincing to do training pay because I think it's smart. But if you're if you're working 100% on commission, you need to have a low level of liability to be more likely to take the job. So people that are younger that have taken on less responsibility, probably a good sign. People that are between 18 and 25 and Americans still on their parents' health insurance, probably a good sign. So we try to target that 18 to 25-year-old male who's a little bit more risk tolerant. And so we'll do that. We'll put in our job title, which is like the hook. If you're running an ad, the job title is the hook. That's what people see. So if eyeballs see it, that's what's going to get people to click. And so we'll put sales, no experience preferred. That gets the most number of people through to actually look at the job post. And then the job post itself has to speak from a non AI written job post on exactly what they're going to be doing, no ambiguity. And it's here's next steps and how you're going to go through this interview process. The other thing that a lot of roofing companies do is they'll put some outrageous salary, which is true, but they'll put like make 150 to $300,000 doing door to door sales, and everyone's like, "Yeah, it sounds too good to be true. Probably a scam. Maybe it's an MLM scheme. Whatever." We just change it to hourly, and we put it a little bit above what the person we know would be good for the job would want to do. We want deprivation. So I don't want the person who thinks they can make 150K or is looking for that. I want the person who is making 20 and would love to make 25. So we put a range of 25 to 35 per hour pending experience. And they'll make way more than that, but that is pretty close to what they're going to make during training for the first 2 to 4 weeks. And then after that, they'll make significantly more. We just teach them how to do it. And so that's the bulk of the front end, and then from there, we get a ton of applicants, like so many applicants, but, we get a lot of applicants, and so we cannot possibly read every single resume, let alone interview everyone. So what we do is we funnel them all into a group call, and then I sell them, and then the people who make it to the end of the group call after all their questions and everything is answered, and they still are willing to be crazy enough to do this, those people go on the leads list that go to, whoever my client is.
So good. That's it's so good, and it's so simple as well. It makes a lot of sense. And so, take us through what your process would be for onboarding. So, for the listeners out there, they have a business, and it's like this could be a good fit. What is your process to be able to, assess one, is it a good fit that your business can help them, and then moving forward there, what does that ongoing, we'll say, service look like for you to be able to help companies get to that next point and help them scale up?
Yeah. So biggest thing is going to be what did they do in revenue last year? So we'll look at their total revenue. And one thing that we're looking at there is we just assume that most roofing companies are going to be between 10 and 20% net profit. A lot of that goes right into the owner's pocket, but we need to look at available cash to spend. Because if we hire too many people too fast, then they will run into bottleneck issues because the insurance claims process is typically 90 days. And so you can only hire so many people. And we know that we're going to have a high churn if I can only hire two people and then you have to wait 3 months before you can do another classroom. It just won't work out. But I'll give you the entire playbook if you want to run it. If you get big enough where it's not worth your time to run it, I'm way higher leverage for you as an owner. And so then they can come see me. But we want them in a storm market, somewhere that gets a storm typically every year or at least every 2 years. We want someone who's in a non-rural area and we want someone who already has some type of sales management and training in place so they can run our playbooks. We'll change how they train, but I need to make sure that there's a body there to show them how to knock doors and role play with them that is actually good at knocking doors and role playing. So it is a little bit niche, I guess, if you'll see it that way. But most roofing companies are running this, and usually the owner has come up through door to door because most owners typically were a door to door salesperson, just like myself, where they thought, huh, I could probably do this a little bit better, make double. So they went to, instead of making a profit split, they went to go own their own the company. So they came up from being a salesperson.
Yeah, that's to me, it's you found you've we'll say you found a pain point in an industry, and you have a process that makes a to me it makes a lot of sense, and you've obviously the proof is in the pudding for you. So to pivot here before we get into rapid fire, you've grown businesses, been super successful. What advice would you have for the entrepreneurs when it comes to investing your money? It's like you make a lot of profit. We're
Mhm.
changing gears a little bit here, but then it's like there's so many different options out there for you to build and invest, right? Your profit. What advice would you have for the entrepreneurs when it comes down to growing their wealth and whether it's investing in their own personal business, but then outside of it as well?
So I have a terrible investment strategy. So my main investment strategy is just get good at whatever you're doing and learn how to make money. And I've been doing that for some time, and I'm just kind of arriving at the point now where it's like, yeah, I should probably start prepping for this retirement thing. But my dumb goal is try to figure out how to make 10 million, put that away, make 5% conservatively, and live off 500K a year.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there's smarter ways to do it, and I will be taking on that battle. But I'm in no place to give advice to others.
Yeah. No, and that's where I think it's the overall thinking process of it, right? Because it's like entrepreneurs, they would see you and like, oh, I wonder, it's a question that generally people don't ask each other as to what your process is, and that's what I've realized. There's not like a right and wrong. It's like,
Hmm.
what's your risk threshold? What kind of skill sets do you have? Where do you believe you can actually sleep at the end of the day? And then, what's your overall process? There's so many different channels, and that's the thing. I think as an entrepreneur, you're constantly getting different opportunities flaunted in front of you, right? So, I think
Yeah,
getting good at what you do at the end of the day, investing, in your business and getting really good is like, to me, that you're going to do really well if you just do that thing, I think, at the end of the day.
yeah. I would say I'm exceptionally good at investing my attention and knowing what to spend my attention on, so I can make more money. Which is trying to identify the bottleneck that's stopping me from making as much as I'd like to. I think that if you cannot figure out how to increase your income, then you won't be able to invest as much as you would like to anyway. Um, I think that if you get active income and you bring that up, I think passive becomes a lot funner of a game when you have money to play with.
So, just follow-up question to that. So investing your attention, I love that, and being able to allocate in the right. How do you structure your day to be able to, block out the noise? Because that's where entrepreneurs, everything is screaming at you, right? And everything is, important and got to get it done now. So how do you structure your day to be able to, be successful on that front?
Um, I like to make sure that I have time to work out. I like to make sure that I have time to have my phone on do not disturb, which allows me to just go into deep work where I'm doing a lot of writing. When I'm having conversations with people that I advise or people that I recruit or people that I talk to, I'm constantly recording those conversations, popping them into ChatGPT, and then reworking the entire transcript into a playbook. So then I can distribute that to other people and have a higher leverage activity. Um, a lot of the times it's just conditioning ChatGPT to build my second brain. I call it Matt GPT. And with that whole structure of my day, a lot of it is just feeding that. So my day continually becomes less. If I'm not talking to a person, um, I'm writing about something that I said or heard from a person. And I'm continually working that. So any type of forms or build outs or playbooks or anything that I have that I want to build out become done in hours rather than weeks through that process. That's most of my day.
When you're learning, so you're basically not just taking notes, you're taking those notes and feeding that into ChatGPT to build your Matt GPT, so to speak,
Hmm.
as you had mentioned. And then from there, you're asking it to build a playbook from that information and being able to get that and distribute that. That to me is it's a simple process, but I don't think I mean that's very few people in the world that are doing that. Has that been beneficial for you? And maybe you could talk a little bit about the fruit of doing that.
Yeah. The company we worked with last year, we were building up their sales team. And if you double revenue, something breaks. And the thing that broke was their claims department, which was how fast they can process a initial claim to something that insurance initially denies into overturning that into a full approval. And they overturned that approval by documenting if the shingle's still available, if a repair is reasonable to be made. And I basically created, well, to cut this short, we had two people in our claims department that could really handle claims, and they were handling like 150 each. They were super backlogged. Our 90-day window was turning into 120, 150 days. And so we needed to bring on more people, but they took like 6 months to train because there were so many one offs that you can't possibly just like systemize it. And so what I did is we hired two people. I taught them personally myself all the concepts of claims. I recorded that every single question that they asked, every single thing that I told them, recorded the entire training session, fed that chat GPT transcript in there, right? And then I built a playbook. And then that playbook was then given to those reps that we trained and the two new reps that we trained right after them, but it accelerated their training. And so we were able to essentially take these conversations and take all the questions that they had and put it in a formatable way that made sense to read from front to back rather than
Mm,
all these mix and match like ideas because there's so much going on up here
yeah,
and we just need organization. And I feel like doing the transcript to ChatGPT or whatever AI, if you're using Claude, that's fine too. But then feeding that into that and dumping it into Notion or something similar where you can, again, organize. And I can build a playbook. I can build if this, then that. And if you drop a claim file into that playbook in conjunction with a fresh ChatGPT, not my own, but just a new person's ChatGPT, you can basically drop that claim playbook in there and you can drop a claim file and say, hey, what do I do next? And it'll tell the claim negotiator what to fight for.
so good. All right, we have three last questions for you here, Matt, and then we're going to wrap up. You ready for rapid fire?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So first question, I'm a big reader, love reading books. Which book has made the biggest impact in your career?
Steal like an artist.
Steal Like an Artist. Okay. Second question is three words that best describe you.
Analytical, playful, and intentional.
Perfect. Final question, which so final advice would you have for the entrepreneurs to be able to take their business to the next level?
Look at who the best people are in your industry, study what they're doing, and don't try to be unique.
So good. Copy proven models, which is one of your superpowers. And I think that's such great advice. Like keep it simple and just copy and apply. And so that's really great advice. Matt, what's the best way that the listeners, if they want to learn a little bit more about your business and reach out, what's the best way they can connect?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram. It's 24HRMATT, 24-hour Matt with no OU.
Awesome. All right, Matt, thanks again for coming on the show. Just such a wealth of knowledge, and you know your craft. And I highly respect other professionals that have that high bar and consistently go for excellence. And you definitely wear that and exude that in spades. So great job on that. Keep
Thank
going.
you.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
right on. And thank you, everyone, for listening to the show. If you liked it, you can go ahead and subscribe to the channel and share with any other entrepreneurs you think would benefit from it. And just remember, one of the fastest ways to grow your wealth is to grow your business and invest in real estate. I love you guys.